father of prophets, breaking the chains of idol worship, fire's transformation into mercy, the incredible life of Prophet Abraham. Idolaters do not want people to worship. They decided to throw Abraham into the biggest fire they could build, with the intent of burning him alive. All the disbelievers were ordered to gather wood for fire as a service to their gods for several days. They collected the firewood, they dug a deep pit, filled it with firewood, and ignited it. They brought a catapult, the big fire, with which they would cast Abraham into the fire. They tied Abraham's hands and feet with ropes and put him on the catapult. The fire was ready, and its flames were reaching the sky. The people stood away from the pit because of the great heat. Then the chief priest gave his order to cast Abraham into the fire. The catapult was shot, and Abraham was cast into the fire. When Abraham was about to be thrown into the fire, Angel Gabriel said, "O Lord, your servant Abraham is being cast into the fire due to his loyalty to you." God responded, "If he seeks your help, then assist him." As Abraham was being catapulted into the fire and was in mid-air, Angel Gabriel asked Abraham, "Do you want to be saved?" Abraham replied, "No, I do not need your help." Gabriel persisted, "Will you not pray to God to save you?" To this, Abraham completely surrendered to God, saying, "God is sufficient for us, and He is the best, capable of managing everything." He showed fully that he was willing to accept God's will, whether God wanted the fire to burn his body or save him. Both are completely the same for him. He even refused the help of Angel Gabriel, which was the last chance to cause a means of salvation, proving that he was worthy of the title Friend of God. He could truly go into the fire or hell for God. He didn't have any fear. The flames were still there, but God issued his command. "O fire, be coolness and safety upon Abraham." Surah Al-Anbiya 69. The fire, under God's command, became cold and saved Abraham. It only burned the ropes binding him. Abraham remained calm in the fire, praising and glorifying God. His heart was filled only with love for God, devoid of fear or regret. For those who love God, even in the face of fire, there is no fear. From a distance, the people, leaders and priests watched the immense fire, which nearly suffocated them and burned their faces. It lasted so long that they believed it would never go out. To their astonishment, when it finally did, they saw Abraham emerging from the pit unharmed, his face radiant with God's grace. The fire had become cool for him, only charring the ropes that bound him. Abraham walked out calmly, and the unbelievers shouted in defeat, realizing his miraculous survival. God says in the Quran, "And they intended for him harm, but we made them the greatest losers." Surah Al-Anbiya 70. This miracle shamed the tyrants, but it did not cool the flame of anger in their hearts. Abraham versus King Nimrod. Debate. Nimrod, king of Babylon, felt that his throne was in danger and that he was losing power because, upon witnessing Abraham coming out of the fire unharmed, some of his people could start believing in God. And Abraham, being a true prophet of God, Nimrod wanted to debate with Abraham and show his people that he is indeed the God and that Abraham was a liar. He feared that the status of the Godhead he had proclaimed for himself was challenged by an ordinary human being. In order to safeguard his interests, he summoned Abraham to the palace and held a dialogue with him. The king, Nimrod, said to Abraham, "I hear that you invite men to worship the new God and to abandon the old God." Abraham said, "There is no God except God." The king, who is proud and arrogant, said, "What does your God do that I cannot do?" Abraham said gently, "My Lord is the one who can bring life and death." The king arrogantly replied, "I give life and cause death." The prophet Abraham did not ask how the king gave life and death, as he knew that the king was lying. Abraham said, "Verily, God is able to bring the sun from the east. Can you bring it from the west?" The king did not know what to say or do. After Nimrod was silenced, Abraham left the royal palace. Then the truth of the prophet Abraham spread throughout the land. Humans started talking about his miracle, his salvation from the fire, and his arguments with the king that made the king speechless. Abraham in migration. Abraham continued calling people to believe in God, trying really hard to guide his people to the right path. He tried every possible means to convince them. However, in spite of his love and care for the people, they did not listen to him and left him. At least 2 persons in his family did, however, accept his message: Lot, his nephew, and Sarah, his wife. Thus Abraham migrated along with them. Before his migration, he invited his father to believe in God. Abraham asked for forgiveness for his father because of a promise he made. But when he realized that his father was an enemy to God, he separated himself from him. Abraham was compassionate and patient. Surah At-Tawbah, verse 114. It was here in this blessed land that God chose to bless Abraham with progeny. And we rescued him and Lot to the land which we have blessed for the worlds, and we blessed him with Isaac as a son, and Jacob as a grandson, as an additional favor, making all of them righteous. Quran 21:72. Abraham stayed in Canaan for several years, going from city to city, preaching and inviting people to God, until a famine forced him and Sarah to migrate to Egypt. Egypt, King Pharaoh versus Sarah, Abraham's wife. In Egypt, there was a despotic king who had the passionate desire to take possession of married women. Abraham had known that Sarah would catch his attention, so he told her that if the king asked her, she should say that she is the sister of Abraham. When they entered his kingdom, as expected, the king asked about his relationship with Sarah, and Abraham replied that she was his sister. While the answer helped calm down his strong feelings a bit, he still kept her as a prisoner. When King Pharaoh called for Sarah because of his strange desires, Sarah prayed to God. As soon as King Pharaoh tried to touch Sarah, his upper body became rigid. He begged Sarah for help, promising to set her free if she prayed for his recovery. Sarah prayed for him to get better, but it was only after a third failed attempt that he gave up, understanding that they were unique. He eventually let her go. While Abraham was praying, Sarah returned with Hagar, a gift from King Pharaoh, because the king recognized their special nature. Sarah had delivered a powerful message to Pharaoh and the pagan Egyptians. Once Sarah and Abraham came back to Palestine, Abraham married Hagar. They still didn't have any children. During that time, it was a common practice for a woman who couldn't have children to give her husband a servant to have children with. Sarah had the idea that Abraham should take Hagar as his concubine to have children. Abraham got married to Hagar, and while they were in Palestine, Hagar gave birth to a son named Ishmael. Abraham and Hagar go to Mecca. When Ishmael was still a baby, God yet again chose to test the faith of his beloved Abraham and commanded him to take Hagar and Ishmael to a barren valley of Baca, 700 miles southeast of Hebron. In later times, it would be known as Mecca. It was a significant test because Abraham and his family had wished for a child for a long time, and when their happiness was complete with the arrival of a child, they were given a command to take him to a distant place, known for its emptiness and difficulties. The Quran says that this was another test for Abraham. When Ishmael was just a baby, however, in the Bible and Judeo-Christian traditions, it is believed to have happened because Sarah was angry and asked Abraham to send Hagar away. After staying with Hagar and Ishmael for some time, Abraham left them there with a small container of water and a bag filled with dates. As Abraham started to walk away, leaving them behind, Hagar began to feel worried about what was happening. Abraham didn't turn back. Hagar ran after him, saying, "Oh, Abraham, where are you going, leaving us in this valley?" Abraham, who by this time was filled with emotion, was unable to speak. Tears rolled down his cheeks, and he turned his face away from her because he knew that leaving his wife and child in that desert was tantamount to certain destruction. But that was the sacrifice demanded of him by God. Hagar, in a bit of anguish, eventually asked, "Did God tell you to do this?" Suddenly, Abraham stopped, turned around and said, "Yes." Hagar submitted to her Lord, "I am satisfied to be with God." While she made her way back to little Ishmael, Abraham continued walking until he reached a narrow path in the mountains where they wouldn't be able to see him. This is the great sacrifice God had demanded of Abraham. Hagar, alone in the desert with baby Ishmael, as the likelihood would apparently seem to be that his young son would die a slow, torturous death over a period of days due to hunger and thirst. This demonstrates the depth of Abraham's faith and the faith of Hagar, as in their unshakable belief in the existence and powers of Allah. Abraham prayed to God, after he left them in the desert, "Our Lord, I have settled some of my offspring in a valley, barren from any cultivation, by you near your sacred house. Our Lord, so they may establish the prayer. So make the hearts of people yearn towards them, and provide them with all types of fruits, that they may be grateful." Quran 14:37. For a few days, the water ran out, and the child started to cry due to thirst. Hagar became very anxious. She ran around here and there to look for water. There were two small hills nearby, Safar and Arwa. She ran to the top of one and then the other, in order to search the area for any trace of water. In her anxiety, she ran 7 times from one hill to the other, and she also cried and prayed to Allah. After the 7th time, she heard a voice, "Miracle of the Kaaba in the desert." It was a revelation from God. She was told to go back to the child and that water would be provided. She ran back to Ishmael and saw that a spring of water had emerged from where the child was kicking with his heels. She thanked God and named the spring Zamzam, the song of happiness. This spring of water is providing water even today, and it is near the Kaaba. "Do not be afraid of being neglected," the angel said, "for this is the house of God, which will be built by this boy and his father, and God never neglects his people." A similar account of this well is given in the Bible in Genesis 21. In this account, the reason for moving away from the babe was to avoid seeing him die, rather than a search for help. After the baby started crying because he was very thirsty, she prayed to God to help her not see him die. People say that a well appeared because Ishmael was crying. Also, the Bible tells that the well was in the desert of Paran, where they lived later on. Jewish Christian scholars often mention that Paran is somewhere north of the Sinai Peninsula, due to the mention of Mount Sinai in Deuteronomy 33:2. However, modern biblical archaeologists believe that Mount Sinai is actually in present-day Saudi Arabia. This means that Paran would also be located in that region. Other than idols,